This is Talking Hardcore, the podcast for people who love hardcore history.
We can skip the boring to the interesting stuff.
Worst person in the world in history, Genghis Khan.
Anyway,
I've met his wife. She's not going to listen.
my wife doesn't listen to this, and she likes me more than his wife likes him.
Yeah, right.
Is that because aliens crashed and stole their technology? This is Talking Hardcore
It might get weird.
with George,
And Scott.
and we're here to talk about hardcore history because we are assuming you are fans of hardcore history with Dan Carlin just like we are. And I'm going to be truthful to you guys. We just filmed episode 2. We recorded episode 2 because we thought it'd be easier to talk about that one first before we did episode 1. So now we're all amped up, so we're recording episode 1.
I think that was a good move. That was the best move.
Right.
All right.
So the reason we are doing a podcast about hardcore history is because we both love hardcore history. A few years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I found out about hardcore history and I told Scott. And he listened to all the episodes. I listened to all the episodes. And Dan Carlin just does such a good job of making history, keeping history interesting.
And engaging.
Too many people lose the plot. How many times are you sitting in history class bored out of your mind? I majored in history because I love this shit in college. And it was still boring.
Yeah. Well, and it's all about, if you think about history, it's all about, well, other than the sex, it's all about battles, mostly battles, and what happens in society.
Or huge things. Not of the boring shit.
Yeah, no, yeah, none of it's boring because it all equals to where we are today.
Right, and we filter out the boring shit to get to the exciting stuff by nature.
No.
And so if a professor makes history boring, it really shows how shitty of a teacher they are.
Yeah, well, and it's the same thing somebody used to say about, I remember somebody said something about Shakespeare. And it was two dudes, and he goes, well, as soon as we figured out it was all about sex and sword fighting, then we were all in. Because that's what Shakespeare is. But then you read Shakespeare, and it's fucking boring. So if somebody interprets it correctly, you're engaged, you want to hear about it. Especially, like young men, they should love Shakespeare. It's all about sex and fighting, for the most part.
But young men do like Shakespeare.
Nah, not a lot. But they make it so fucking boring.
But if you listen to Hamlet, you don't think it's boring.
It is boring.
But it gets
even the movie they made, Hamlet, was fucking boring.
To be or not to be is not a boring speech.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
But I get what you're saying.
Was fucking boring.
I never watched it, so I'll take your word
for it. It was boring.
But I understand what you're saying.
Romeo and Juliet, even the remake
they ruined
with
that
Leonardo DiCaprio, they tried to make it modern and hip, and this was 30 years ago now?
Yeah, we're old.
I know we're old, but that's not my point. My point was, I still thought it sucked.
Right, but if you watch it now, maybe it wouldn't.
No, it still sucked.
Have you read Shakespeare as an adult?
Yeah. No, not as an adult. I haven't read it since I was in my 20s.
You probably haven't read it since high school.
No, I was in my college.
Yeah, early 20s.
Okay, early 20s.
Early 20s.
Sure, 19, 20.
That ain't the same thing as an adult.
I don't think I'd want to read it now.
I bet you'd find it way more irrelevant.
No, I'd find it way more inappropriate. 14-year-olds going at it.
Yeah, but I feel like if you read Shakespeare now, you would find that it spoke to you a lot better than you did in high school. Maybe. That's why I've actually just recently made the decision to start reading Hemingway again. Because I read Hemingway in high school and I hated it. But I feel like I can't go by that. Because I read it in high school.
That's like saying you want to read Jonathan Livingston Seagull again. That book was terrible.
Yeah, but dude, there's a reason people are still reading Hemingway.
Hemingway's good. It is good.
So it must be... I should give it a better try. No, it's fine. Just keep going.
Well, I don't know.
I do think
you could read the
so
old
anyway,
man
we're getting back to where we're talking.
Yeah. So yeah,
hardcore history. We are both huge fans. This podcast is going to be talking about why we love it, and then it's going to be talking about individual episodes and thoughts that occur to us while we were listening to them. And we hope that it starts a discussion with you guys about things that occurred to you while you listened to it, or your thoughts that you had while listening to us talk about it.
Well,
Because that's the best part about hardcore history, is the conversations I've had with my friends that also listen to it.
and the other thing, and I think you're right when you said that, maybe Dan Carlin should be making podcasts to teach history to, high schoolers or middle schoolers or whatever, because it's not all rah Americana, according from
It's just
coming
interesting.
from Dan Carlin. But yeah, and you know what? He's not an actual historian, but he's somebody that's very interested in history, and that is why it's engaging, because he makes it engaging.
Right, because he cares.
Yeah, and then he loves the subject
And a
matter.
lot of teachers start off caring and then slowly stop caring.
Well, it's about your
I had a class in college. Okay. It was a history major. And it was history Near East to Alexandria.
Yep.
So think about what that means. That should have been that should have been the most interesting shit. Those podcasts that Dan did about that, the King of Kings and all that, I love them. This whole class, all we did was look at slides of this professor's digs.
Well, that makes no sense.
Yeah, he would go to like Iraq and dig and a mound up and show us pottery.
So that's straight up narcissism. Is
Well, no, I mean, he was
that's
like-
what it sounds like.
No, it's a different style of history where they were
that's
looking
not
at
different.
The,
Stuff.
well,
This
no,
is
they were
this
looking
is
at
what
the-
I did.
They were looking at the common man and what their experiences were, with negating the actual interesting part of history, which is the big events.
Well, sure.
And the best part about being able to look back on history from now is that we can skip the boring shit to the interesting stuff, right? And that doesn't mean we forget that the boring shit happened,
Well,
but we don't focus on it, and that's what this class did.
what's good about history, though, George, is once you learn the interesting stuff, some people want to learn the details. Well, what was everyday life like?
Sure.
And-
And that is interesting once you get the... You're right.
Yeah, so then you can nerd out on the more mundane things
Right.
later.
Right.
But as long as you get like the meat and potatoes, and then you can learn, you can
Right.
you can finish up on the carrots and gravy later.
No, you nailed that. That's exactly right. And so Dan gives you the
Meat and potatoes.
general facts. It gives you the stuff you need to find it engaging, to find it fun.
Yep.
And that's why we love it. So follow along. The next episode is going to be discussing episode 1 of Hardcore History, which is comparing Adolf Hitler to Alexander the Great. And so that's going to be uploaded at the exact same time as this one, so you guys can get 2 episodes at the same time. And then next we're just going to go right into episode 2, which the first few episodes were short and sweet. And so we'll try to keep ours similar. But again, it's just thoughts, and they take us where they take us. And if you have any comments or things you think that would be great for us to discuss, please let us know.
Sounds
See
good.
you on the next episode.